announcements and correspondence. So I think by way of correspondence, the big news on that front is the message that was sent around yesterday from the county. And I'm seeing Harry Tregenza has his hand raised. Harry, what's up?
Just real quick, can you record on your end? Looks like you're the host for this meeting. If you don't mind.
Okay, it says it's recording on mine.
Oh, okay, then we're good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Harry. The message that was sent around, Harry sent a message that we had received from the County of Monterey. And it, let's see, I'm trying to find that here. Basically, it talks about county's concerns on the transition plan implementing agreements and brings into question the ability or the willingness of the county to sign on to those. So that can be a topic for further conversation later as we have a business item scheduled for that, but that's probably the biggest piece of correspondence to report this morning. Is there any other announcements from any of the staff? Harry, did I miss anything on our list?
No, I don't think so.
And there'll be opportunities. Anyone announcements from members? Okay. So then we'll move next into public comment period. Any member of the public wishing to address the committee on matters within its jurisdiction, but not on this agenda, may do so for up to 3 minutes. Any members of the public wishing to make comments? Seeing none, hearing none. Okay, we'll bring it back to approval of the meeting minutes from May 6th, 2020.
I'll move approval. Pick.
Second, Malin.
We have a motion by Dino Pick, second by Craig Malin. Harry, you're raising your hand again.
There's just one correction to the minutes. Mike Zeller needs to be changed to TAMC from MCWD.
I thought Mike got a new job, but okay. Yeah, we'll let that one. Is the maker of the motion okay with that? Okay.
Good to go.
Okay. So then we'll need a roll call vote to approve the minutes. Harry.
Okay. Craig Malin,
Yes.
Dino Pick,
Yes.
Lane Long. I don't know if he's here.
He's not here yet.
Hans Uslar. And Melanie Beretti.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Great. Moving right along. Item 5, the May 14th board meeting follow-up. So big progress was made on the 14th. The progress there includes, just bring up the item here so I can have it in front of me. There's Lane. Right on schedule. Good morning. So there was some discussion on the transition status report under consent. That was an item that lots of people are paying attention to, obviously, and there'll be one question was on the transition plan, the 2020 transition plan, and that'll be coming to the board Friday for information, discussion, consideration of some of the language that member Hoffa put up on the screen as a topic for discussion. Again, the plan is that this Friday will be information only, and the action item would come June 11th is the current plan. And for anyone who missed it, in that transition status report that is in the packet from last week, there was a calendar, I think it was on page 79 of that packet, that outlined the plan for the remainder of the year's agenda items. So if that's useful, I'd recommend folks checking that out. So the two big business items were the MOA for transferring the capital improvement program projects. And as noted during the meeting, the county requested holding back the Oak Woodland project transfer. And so that was held back. So the action was taken on the three projects for Marina, Seaside, Delray Oaks, Monterey. And there was a motion that was a non-unanimous vote. So that'll be coming back for a second vote this Friday. And then the other big item was the joint community facilities agreement. This is the agreements for transferring the habitat conservation funds collected in the via the CFD, and that passed unanimously. So now we need to sign those documents and we can begin moving the money. So that was the last week's board meeting, and are there any questions from that? Melanie.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. I'm going to go back and review the transition plan proposed edits, but just while it's a part of the topic, the language that linked receipt of any funding to the transition plan implementing agreement, that's getting recommended to get pulled out, correct?
What's that? I didn't hear.
Sorry. The language that is intended to link signing off on the transition plan implementing agreements to your ability to receive any funding from FORA, that's
No,
gone?
that goes away.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to double check.
More on that later, but yeah, gone.
Nope, fine, thank you.
Any other questions from members on last week's board meeting? Okay, seeing none. Any questions on that from members of the public? Okay, Sherry Damon.
Yeah, in reviewing the minutes for the last board meeting, it looks like there are some typographical issues in your board packet right now. You might want to take a look at it. There's some numbering issues.
Is it not for the current packet or the past meeting?
The draft board packet of the minutes of the last board meeting. There's some typographicals in the minutes.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. Thank you. So I guess with that, we'll move on to the draft board packet for the next board meeting. And we did include this group, this dexterous remaining FORA staff have become excellent packetizers. I mean, we can turn out a packet like in our sleep. So we were doing that Friday, and Friday afternoon we put together an admin packet and another special board meeting packet, and that is included. One thing you'll note is there was a number of placeholders. That's one of our key strategies for a quick packet. But we were able to include the item for the second vote. That was a good one because most of that's already together. And then we did include this item 7B, which was the Oak Woodlands project for the county. And I think there's still a question outstanding whether that will actually be ready for consideration on Friday or not. So Melanie, do you have anything on that?
My guess is we won't be able to get the full comments to you to be able to hit that meeting timeline. It's not a question of taking it on, it's just making sure the agreement says
Right.
a little more limited to just that. So, yeah, so I would assume no. But I can loop back and see where we are timing wise with that.
You would assume it's ready?
I would assume we won't be able to get you by Friday,
Okay,
have time to get you comments and go back and forth to
Okay.
agreement to go on Friday.
so the next special meeting of the board will be June 4th. So maybe
Okay.
we can target that one for.
Yeah,
now.
that helps. And I was going to ask which one should we target, and I'll just make a point.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and then just our plan really has been to have this conversation here today and then send the packet out for the special meeting of the board on Friday by the end of the day today. We've been receiving a series of documents related to the bond. And in fact, Harry just sent out a link as we were getting together with the latest draft of this item 7C, the bond documents. And so if you did not receive an email, the current version of these draft bond documents are now posted on the administrative committee website, or FORA website admin committee page under draft bond documents in the materials column. So nothing like a light 160-page read for day of delivery, but hopefully folks who have been in the circle of editing and receipt of documents from the bond council are familiar with these materials, especially for their own jurisdictions. But there is a nice board report that we've included there, and I do want to again give a nod to our man Mark Northcross and his team at NHA Advisors. They just continue to be super responsive and I'll say positive and flexible to help us maneuver this rather complex bond deal. With that said, if you click on that draft bond documents link, you'll I think the item is worth discussion here, just to step through it so you can help address any questions that your board members may have. There's some pretty noteworthy changes as we've gotten to where we are, which is sort of the go time on this deal, but it's outlined well in this report. The big news is there's no pledge of the FORA share of the tax increment from the county's East Garrison project area. And that came by way of some kind of details that were unearthed as the underwriting team and the actuarial team involved in that work got into the details, and it was determined that the county contribution was not going to be viable. And Melanie's raising it. Melanie, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, do you want to say something here?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment just for
Sure.
kind of everyone to know about that. You know, our team really, it was really just the nature of the way that our development disposition agreement is written with the East Garrison development, that there's not a time and date certain for accomplishments of things. And our team really worked, we had outside bond counsel and our counsel really working hard with the bond team to try to be able to keep those revenues as a part of the pledged repayment to keep the bond issuance larger. But there was just no way to find satisfactory language for the underwriter to be able to include it. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knew clear, we really worked hard to find a way to keep those revenues as a part of the bond issuance, and it just was not feasible.
Yeah, thank you, Melanie, for saying that. I would likewise just back that up. You know, we have been working diligently, the whole team, including multiple meetings with the county and their whole advisory group, and everyone was working hard to try to keep the original path. And like Melanie described, it just became not viable. And I think the good news is that we've been able to keep a path forward that will bring significant bond building removal money to the table, and will achieve the big vision. So thanks to the county for all the time spent on that, and flexibility and support over these many months to get to here. Couldn't have happened without that. And also just in continuing to support the bond issue as we come to the finish line, hopefully here. The other information in the indenture includes a set aside amount to cover the termination liability for CalPERS. This is the cleanest way to proceed to ensure that the CalPERS obligations are settled and that the bond issue can go forward. As a result of the county stepping out of the bond transaction, the percentages that were agreed to by the board and recommended by this committee have been adjusted such that the 4.5% of the bond proceeds that were going to go to the county have been equally allocated to the city of Marina and the city of Seaside, as both the cities, their project areas are the repayment source for the bond. That's included in the updated indenture. And also, finally, the addition of an escrow term bond for the city of Marina. And while I have become much more comfortable with the terms of bond transactions over the last many months that we've been working on this thing, I wouldn't want to be the one describing exactly the details of the escrow term bond transaction. Maybe Lane wants to step to that, or Mark Northcross if you're on the line. Lane, looks like you're raising your hand. But you're on mute.
Sure.
Okay, there you go.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, it all gets back to, I think the original plan was to do the escrow bonds, and then as things kind of fell apart, our city council is willing to move forward with those escrow bonds and pledge the tax increment that is generated in our service areas. And we've run some projections out 3 to 4 to 5 years. Mark has been great helping us on that. And it looks like those escrow bonds can be anywhere between $5 and $7 million. And so our council has approved that, and we're moving forward. And so we appreciate Mark and FORA working with us to be able to do that. And I don't know if Seaside is considering to do that on their own in their project area. I would like to mention on the bond that's moving forward with FORA, and we've had some good discussions with the county and understanding what has happened, and we appreciate the FORA board moving on that. But I wanted to at least point out that the majority of this still is coming from the tax increment generated from the city of Marina. And so I think it's 68 to 70% is what we're generating towards that blight removal bond. And so most of it is we're spread out to the other areas of the area to benefit, which I think is good. We're all trying to cooperate with this, but I just want to point out that 70% of that increment is being generated. And so is the plan from the FORA board that all of the CalPERS payment is going to come from the bond? And is there any discussion of the county's now they're pulling out, are they, any discussions of them taking a portion of the CalPERS bond payment, or is that all coming from the proceeds generated from the tax increment in the city of Marina and Seaside?
Currently, the way it's set up, Lane, is that it would come from the bond transaction.
Okay.
Any other points on what we've covered so far on this bond report? And is this everyone's liking the review of this in as much detail as we're going in? I figure it's an important matter that we should discuss here. Good, Sherry, I see your hands raised.
Yes, thank you, Josh. Just wondering if Mark Northcross has any additional information on the anticipated CalPERS number that's going to come off the top of the bond yet.
We haven't received any additional information. We do have this actuarial firm kind of working to come up with a best estimate. The last information I've seen had to do with the change in the discount rate from 2.92% to 1.2 something percent, which basically took the high end of the potential termination liability from 8.1 million up to around 10.5 million. And so there's a $2 million gap in there from what the board had planned to fund. There's a money in a Section 115 trust to the tune of about 6.5 million, and then there's another 1.5 that was set aside to increase that amount. So that the idea is it's around 2 million, and the thought is that initially there'll be up to $5 million set aside in an escrow account to cover any termination liability costs, and then the remainder of those funds that not spent on the CalPERS would be redistributed to the jurisdictions on the basis of the allocations that are provided in the indenture. So there's some description, actually good description in the report on the escrow term bond piece. And then there's the next document after the indenture is a bond purchase agreement. And it sets forth the conditions under which the bond underwriting team will commit to purchase the FORA bonds. And that's between Stifel and Citi and FORA. There's a preliminary official statement. That's the document that's still pending. We'll have that included in the final packet that goes out today. And then there are revised funding agreements, primarily removing the county, reallocating, allowing for the reallocation of any unused bond proceeds after the CalPERS termination payment to funding agreements per the revised allocation percentages that were stated above, and then allowance for allocation to Marina for the release of bond proceeds from the Marina escrow term bond. And there's an irrevocable direction to transfer funds. This would be executed by the county, FORA, and the city of Marina, acting as the FORA bond administrator. And it provides just direction on how to manage the transfer of tax increment and so forth. And then there's a resolution about the bond and disclosure council agreement, payment for the council for their work. And finally, there's a schedule which looks to close the bond on June 25th. So June 26th is currently not formally set up as a board meeting, but I would hold June 26th, Friday afternoon as the last possible FORA board special meeting. There could be cause for celebration. Well, there will be for some, but maybe even more with this bond here in hand. And then there's some language here about good faith estimates and kind of talking about the various parts, the net proceeds of the bonds now in the range of 28.7 million target. And so that is the package. For ease of browsing, as we were putting this thing together, normally we don't make the attachment part of the package clickable, but since it was so substantial, we added, you'll see page numbers, and if you go in there, you can kind of click down to the, click on those page numbers, and it should take you to the right location in the packet. So that's item 7C for the upcoming meeting packet. Are there any questions on that? Further questions? Looks like Lane's got his hand up.
Yeah, so you said 28.7 million is what you estimate the bond at right now?
That's what's, yes, in this report, it says net proceeds of the bond to be received, net of finance charges, reserves, and capitalized interest, if any, is 28.7 million.
And then the PERS would be deducted from that.
Right.
And right now, again, the PERS is how much that you're projecting?
Well, 2 million is what we're projecting, but the recommendation is to withhold more than that and then redistribute it after the payment. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
2 million. Let's hope it stays that way or lower.
Cross fingers.
As the market improves, the cost improves, cost factors. So keep rooting for the big economy to work. It has sure been a dynamic market experience through all of this. Yeah, just a note on that. I mean, what we heard from CalPERS was this was the kind of multi-decadal low in terms of the discount rate. So probably couldn't have been a worse time to close an agency and terminate a CalPERS contract. And conversely, the big market has suffered significantly from the coronavirus. And so just the timing of what we're trying to do at this particular moment has significantly affected our proceeds. But this is the world we live in, and so we go forward with a good foot approach. So, that's that. And then if any other questions on 7C from members? Any other questions, comments from the public on 7C? Okay, so then we're into 7D, which is the 2020 transition plan. And I will ask Kendall Flint, who's most dexterous with this whole topic, to add some color to what we're putting in the packet today.
So what's going to happen actually later today, I think close of business with Josh had said, we're going to be re-releasing the draft language for the 2020 transition plan. And I want to make you all aware that that is, it incorporates some changes that were necessitated by comments received from the county regarding the TPIAs. And I think we've talked about this before. It's unlikely that those documents are going to be signed. So the references therein in the 2020 transition plan needed to be scrubbed out. The other thing I want to make you aware of is that Member Hoffa's proposed amendment, which includes a section regarding prevailing wage is also going to be included in that agenda package. And we're going to be asking the board to give direction and discussion on whether or not they want to include that or not. And then the idea is to bring back the 2020 transition plan at either the June 4th or June 11th board meeting, depending on how a number of things shake out over the next couple of days. And if we have to go to second vote, we would certainly do that at that time. If your agencies have issues or questions regarding the 2020 transition plan, want to make it super clear that it's in the package. Please get us any challenges or issues that you might have as soon as possible, but it will be going to the board definitely in June for a vote, and we likely a second vote. But at that point, then we will return that document back over updated to our friends at LAFCO. A couple of reminders on that. The 2020 transition plan memorializes the distributions for the habitat conservation funds. It also lists the transfer of properties through MOA to the various underlying jurisdictions, and includes all of the board actions that have been taken and direction given to staff, which includes the recording of the master resolution, which happened April 14th. So I'm looking forward to a very spirited discussion on Friday, but it will be one with no action. We'll be coming back for action in June, and I will be available to answer any questions you might have about that process.
Okay, I'm seeing Sherry Damon's hand up.
Yes, thank you. Since the master resolution got recorded on April 14th, I think you said, could you send out a copy of what was recorded with the file stamp on it for our records? That would be greatly appreciated.
I think we're also waiting from the county to get the formal letter. It was recorded. We're just waiting for the formal piece, but Harry will be sending that out to everyone once it.
Yeah, we still hadn't, as of last Friday, received a paper copy of what the county has on file. We do have a confirmation from the online submittal that Giffen and his firm handled back in April. Do you have any more comments on that, John, or that's pretty much where it's at?
No.
Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. We included a self-addressed stamped envelope to have it returned to FORA after it was recorded. So we're kind of curious as to where it is, but we'll get it, and we'll track it down.
Okay. So we're still paying attention to that. As soon as we have it, we'll share it for sure. Okay, so any further comments on the board meeting agenda review from, there's Mark Northcross. We handled everything, Mark. But thanks for showing up. It's all good. Everyone's going to be looking for the final packet this afternoon. Are there any more questions on the board meeting packet for Friday from members? Any from the public? Okay, seeing none, we can move on to our business items at hand. And what I'm gonna suggest is that we take item 7B, the transition plan implementing agreement, first, because I think that's going to be a shorter item. And then we would do the consistency determination discussion after that. So Kendall, do you want to just talk about what the implications are from the county's email from yesterday?
So we did receive, I just want to backtrack slightly. The language that was included in the agreement had been provided to all the member agencies for quite some time, but we only received the county's comments yesterday. And they essentially said that the county would not be willing to sign the agreement as it exists in its current form. And one thing that the legal team and I have been discussing, I think with this group as well over the last couple of months, is that as that agreement has evolved and less and less and less and less and less were in it, it became more challenging to determine what the value of it was. And one of the specific things that the county would not agree to was the language that this admin committee approved as it related to water. So basically, despite this group's best effort to make recommendations, it appears that that is not viable moving forward. And so I'm going to actually defer to John Giffen, because I think from a legal standpoint, and David Willoughby, that we're basically dead in the water on the TPIAs at this point. So gentlemen, do you want to address that?
I can just comment that since we've been working on the TPIA, it's become, watered down to the point that it's nearly meaningless. And even in its watered down condition, the jurisdictions are not coming forward to sign it, as evidenced by the county's latest comments. From our perspective, the outcome is not terribly surprising given LAFCO's refusal to use its implied powers to impose the assignments. If FORA could not negotiate the assumptions with the jurisdictions, and really the jurisdictions appear to have lost their incentive to cooperate. Each jurisdiction is dug in, and we are left with a document that's really nobody wants to sign, and it doesn't mean anything anyway. So that's kind of where we are. Unfortunately, it's a disappointing outcome, but that's where we are with 41 days left to go here at FORA.
I do want to add on to that, just so that everyone understands, because this definitely affects Delray Oaks and the county and others, that within the transition plan, and even with the MOUs, that any reference to a signed or fully executed TPIA in order to either receive habitat funds or CIP funds or anything has been stripped. So it will not affect any of the local agencies' abilities to take funds from FORA moving forward. And I think, to be honest, I think Michael's original vision of this back in 2018 was kind of the hammer, right? The idea was that the TPIAs would be enforceable because you could tie the money to it. Since we can't do that, as John said, we're sending them off into a sweet good night. So it's one thing that's checked off the list, I guess, for that particular thing, but the next would be the 2020 plan, and that's where we're at.
Yeah. Any questions from members on that? Lane, I'm seeing Lane's hand. Go ahead.
So what does that mean as far as the implementation agreements?
So that's a very good question, Lane. And that's one of the things that, as you know, that Gail at the City of Marino really wanted in the TPIA, which was specific language that would say that those documents would supersede the 2001 agreements. I think that this is going to come before the board for their discussion on Friday. We have been of the belief that at FORA's sunset, those implementation agreements from 2001 are no longer, that they're no longer enforceable post FORA because LAFCO will not enforce them. And that's one of the reasons I think we've discussed this, I think, with Ron Cheshire and others, that language as it relates to prevailing wage and this sort of stuff, that's one of the reasons that the City of Monterey is asking that language to be included in the 2020 transition plan, because it would take some of those responsibilities and memorialize them going forward in the plan. That will be up for discussion, as I say, on Friday. We're not voting on it, but any other issues that were in the implementation agreements, now is the time if you want to see those in the 2020 transition plan, because they will no longer. Now, again, David and John, John and can't even speak. John and David have discussed this at length about what the position is for FORA about what the viability of those documents are moving forward. We don't think they're enforceable, but we're not putting language into the agreement that says specifically that is done at this time. David, did you want to address that? Because I know we kind of talked about that earlier.
Basically, the 2001 vintage implementation agreements could have survived through a process of assignment. And assignment can take place either by a voluntary contractual agreement between the S&R, in this case FORA, and the S&E, which would have been the jurisdictions. As we've seen, that the jurisdictions are not willing to voluntarily accept assignment of those contracts. The other process by which an assignment could have been effectuated was through the exercise of powers that we believe LAFCO has, but LAFCO has a different impression of its authority and has declined to exercise or says that it can't exercise the powers to impose assignments. So with the old implementation agreements not being assigned, after FORA goes away, it's our belief that there may be no one left standing capable of enforcing the agreements. But by the approach that we're taking, we are not foreclosing third parties from making that argument if they wish. We're just saying FORA is not going to exist and FORA can't enforce these things, so their enforceability is in doubt.
So Josh, is there any discussion for FORA to take an action on itself on terminating those agreements? Or is it just gonna, as David said, just kind of float out there?
So far, there hasn't been a specific discussion on that point. It seems like the direction, just from my non-lawyer vantage point, there are a number of legal matters that will, need to be resolved as things happen post FORA, and that may be one of them. I think the other matters have to do with, things like the HCP, EIR, and all of that kind of stuff. So, I think it's partly, as described, a factor of different interpretations of the role of LAFCO and their ability to do assignments of obligations and other things that are complicating the issue. But again, your board members, we staff follow the direction of the board. If that was something that the board wanted to take up, then we would respond, obviously.
Thank you.
So I'm seeing a couple other, do you have anything more on that, Lane? No, okay. I'm seeing Kendall and then Doug Yount.
So I just wanted to add on to that, what Josh was talking about, Lane, that, as an example, we received direction from this group and actually from previous board meetings regarding prevailing wage, but there's been reconsideration of that. And so Member Hoffa brought that up. If the city of Marina wants the board to consider action on terminating those agreements formally, you'd need to bring that up. And I would suggest you have the member bring that up at the next board meeting, because again, with 40-something days left, there's very little time to take action on that. But as it sits today without a formal action, it's going to go as David expressed that, which is basically, it'll be fought about post FORA amongst yourselves.
For the record, we're at 41 days, 7 hours, 44 minutes, and 12 seconds. So forgot to do that at the beginning. Doug Yount.
Yes, thanks, Josh. If it's appropriate, I was wondering if David Willoughby or John Giffen could talk about what is the primary risk if the implementation agreements are not assigned?
Well, I'm not sure how to identify it in terms of risk, but because it appears that the implementation agreements will not be assigned, the consequence is there is a degree of ambiguity about how they could possibly be enforced after FORA no longer exists. These agreements are agreements between FORA and individual jurisdictions, and it is almost as if one of the parties died. That party as a practical matter, just can't do anything after it no longer exists. So I guess in terms of risk, it is that the provisions of the old implementation agreements may no longer be enforceable because FORA isn't there to enforce them. And because there has been no assignment and no entry into a new transition plan implementing agreement, many of those programs will effectively not have been replaced.
Okay, I'm seeing Dino Pick. Still on mute,
Josh.
Dino, there you go. Okay.
So I just want to get a sense of the direction. Then it certainly sounds like what you are saying, and certainly what John said is that based on what we know from the comments from the county and the comments from many land use jurisdictions, it does not appear that a TPIA is going to be adopted by FORA and signed by the jurisdictions. Is that an accurate summary on the one hand? And if so, what, if any, action are we going to take today? Or are we just letting this sort of die on the vine?
I think your summary is accurate, Dino. And no action, I don't believe any action has been planned. So it's probably going to die on the vine.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, the old die on the vine scenario here. Yeah, so any further discussion on item 7B, the transition plan implementing agreement? Anything from members? Okay, anything from the public? Okay, seeing none. We'll move on to item 7A. The big item of the day is the campus town consistency determination. And this is an exciting development, I know, for the city of Seaside, looking to move this really great project forward. You know, I've been on the sidelines watching this thing develop and for many years, and I know the city council was involved in actions earlier in the year with great community support. I know Craig could hold forth for hours on how well suited this project is for the site. Kurt Overmeyer, who's on the line, also could do that. But today, you know, we're taking on the formal role that this will be a historic last action of this type by the Fort Ord Reuse Authority Board, in hopefully certifying that this project is consistent with the base reuse plan. And this process of consistency determination was, you know, one of the primary functions of FORA as it was set up as a way to ensure that local land use planning and zoning was consistent with the overall, was generally consistent with the overall reuse plan of Fort Ord, which is pretty much like a general plan of a city. So there's a specific process that was set up for that, and we'll kind of summarize that for you in the presentation. As you all know, Steve Flint, who's on the line over here, another, you might recognize the last name, and yes, there is a relationship there, but this team from RGS, Steve is the planning expert on that team, and was contracted to function as a staff member of FORA to conduct the review. Now, I have personally been through a number of these in my 6.5 years with FORA, so we've been working together on this process, but we also got a real nice complete package provided by the city of Seaside. I think if anyone was looking for a good example of how that should be done, although you won't need it for FORA, but you might need it for other things in the future, I think the team at Seaside put together a great submission package, which was provided to you all shortly after we received it in a general email to the admin list, and then was included in the package that we sent out last Friday. So Steve is gonna kind of take us through just a brief PowerPoint presentation talking about what we received, the analysis that we conducted to confirm consistency, and conclude with the recommendation that we have that this group, the joint meeting of the admin committee and the planners working group, and if you're, just for background on that, many folks that are on this admin committee are also on the planners working group. The planners working group is an ad hoc committee that met only when there was need to do this consistency determination. So for efficiency, we co-notice this meeting and will take an action by the admin as the recommendation for the board. So that's provided for in the administrative committee report that was included in the packet, the recommendation that staff has. And so Steve, if you want to, do you want to share your screen to show that? We've also provided a link to this PowerPoint on the admin webpage if you want to get your own copy and take a look at it there. But Steve will go ahead and step through, and then I can back Steve up. And then also we do have on the line, I know many of the Seaside City staff, and I believe potentially some of their development team as well. So with that, I'll hand it to you, Steve.
Well, thank you very much, Josh, and hello, everybody. I'm pretty much a newcomer to this process. You've all been working on the campus town specific plan for a long time. I want to thank the city of Seaside for providing a really complete package, a lot of material, and it was all very, very helpful. So I'll just launch into this. So basically, the City Council of Seaside unanimously adopted their resolution certifying an environmental impact report, which included a mitigation monitoring program. I think it's interesting to note that there was not any significant impacts that could not be mitigated as part of that process. They also adopted the ordinance that established the campus town specific plan and all the other implementing ordinances and resolutions that went along with that, including the updates to the general plan, circulation element, zoning maps, and text. We received that material on April 30th and began going through it. Pretty extensive package related to the base reuse plan consistency determination, which Josh mentioned is already spelled out in the master resolution. So again, the submittal package included the specific plan, general plan, zoning map, and development entitlements. I'll get my directions straight here in a minute. Just for context, this is the site area. Runs basically from 1st Avenue to 7th Avenue on the east, Colonel Durham Road to the north and the campus, and Giggling Road to the south. So construction will allow up to 485 dwelling units, 250 hotel rooms, 75 youth hostel beds, 150 square feet of retail, dining, entertainment, 50,000 square feet of office, flex, maker space, which is kind of a new term to me. I've always known that is live work, and then light industrial uses, as well as parks, recreation, and open space, and all infrastructure to support that. This is the process that we are going through. We're pretty much starting at the right-hand side of the screen. both the working group review and administrative committee review as we move forward with a recommendation to the FORA board. I believe you read the staff report, but just to summarize, we are providing the legislative land use consistency determination provided in Chapter 8 of the FORA Master Resolution.
And development entitlement review at the same
And
time.
development entitlement review, correct. So one of the interesting things about this process is that it's kind of a reverse negative that says the authority board shall disapprove any of the following conditions. So the first
I would
is
just
that,
add, if I might, Steve, just on that note, as I was getting into this and kind of looking at, you know, a little bit in retrospect, getting to the end of the FORA roadmap and looking at lessons learned, I would say if I was to take on a similar type of a project like this in the future, I might consider beginning with rather than the double negative in the policy, just stating what the policy wants rather than what it doesn't want. Maybe that and scheduling board meetings late on Friday afternoon were two of the fatal flaws of the FORA program. But enough said, I'll go ahead and pass it back to you, Steve. Thank you.
great, okay. So there's essentially 9 provisions that we have to consider. The first being that land use designation allows, so you cannot allow more intensive land uses than the use permitted in the reuse plan. And based on that, the reuse plan does limit it to development and commercial uses to a 0.25 floor area ratio. And FORA did previously determine that the general plan of Seaside was consistent with the reuse plan. And these amendments continue to be in compliance with the regulations. The specific plan allows 200,000 square feet of retail, entertainment, office, light industrial, as well as the hotel rooms, youth hostels, and the other land uses that are involved. Speaking of the land uses, one aspect that did come up was the fact that there would be no allowed gambling or any kind of casinos as part of this overall development. The land use portion of the specific plan provides for a number of uses that are permitted or conditionally permitted, and casinos are not allowed as part of that. There is a determination that can be made if there was a similar use, but there really seems to be nothing within the specific plan area that could be deemed similar. And on top of that, the city of Seaside has a prohibition about any kind of gambling through card rooms or other appurtenances of gambling. In other words, you know, slot machines, things like that. So I think we're covered on that front. So there's no more dense, does not allow more intensive uses, is in substantial conformance with the applicable programs, and does not provide any uses that would conflict or that are incompatible with uses or allowed in the reuse plan for any of the surrounding properties, including open space, recreational habitat, and anything else within the jurisdiction.
Yeah, and if I might just jump in here a little bit on that also, you know, this particular site is, you know, when you're up there and those old Vietnam War era barracks are down and you're looking out towards the bay, it's got elevation, it's got incredible vantage point, and it's located, you know, directly adjacent to the CSUMB campus. I mean, this is really a prime site, and so I think the design of the project to, you know, tie closely to the future of the campus is noteworthy here. And while the regional urban design guidelines that were developed and approved by the board in 2016 are not a formal evaluation criteria under the master resolution, they are recommended and were reviewed and incorporated by this design team. And so I think that's also noteworthy. This project really reflects kind of the best of both the local site conditions and design for connection with the university, and reflects, you know, these design ideals that the big region put together back in 2016.
Okay, I'll carry on. It does not require other financial or installation construction other than that would be provided by the developers themselves. And it does not require otherwise provided for implementation of the habitat management plan. So that in this particular area, the habitat management plan has minimal effect. There really is no area that's not designated for development within the HMP. So it is in compliance with that.
Yeah, and I think, again, I just note on this one, you know, this is, I think, perhaps along with what Marina's implementing at the dunes, this is the quintessential build on blighted area first model, where this project, you know, is being built on formerly used for intensive habitation and office and other uses by the military. I mean, this is the ideal of reusing previously used area. So minimal, if any, habitat impacts from this project.
Absolutely. And with regard to the financing and installation, it's anticipated that Seaside will form a CFD to fund the maintenance of the city's public improvements within the specific plan area. And there will be a master association and several sub-associations that will pay for all the infrastructure, maintenance, and operations on site. So additional considerations involved. One is that it does not conflict with the highway design corridor. Highway 1 does not abut this project, so there is no conflict with that. It is consistent with the jobs housing balance requirements developed and approved by the authority within the master resolution. The city has recently updated their housing element and is in compliance. There will be a new housing element in 2024, but in the meantime, their housing element is in compliance with state law and state HCD requirements. And then finally, I know this is an item that everybody's been talking about, but according to the development agreement, it will be consistent with the prevailing wage policy in FORA's master resolution. So our recommendations are to determine that the FORA admin committee and working group determine the campus town plan consistent with the base reuse plan, and recommend that the board approve a resolution certifying the City of Seaside's general plan circulation element amendments, zoning map and text amendments, creating the campus town specific plan district, campus town specific plan, and development entitlements for the campus town project, and determine that they are consistent with the base reuse plan. And with that, we'll take questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Steve. We'll first go out to members. Are there any questions or comments from members? Mike Zeller, I'm seeing.
Yes, thank you. So just had a question about the development entitlement agreements. With FORA sunsetting and then the CFD not being in place anymore, will the entitlement agreements discuss payment of regional fees that are in place when the permits are pulled for the development, or any discussion about payment of impact fees.
Okay, I think what I'll do here is I'll go directly to the source and lean on either Craig or Sherry or any other member of the team from Seaside that might want to address that question.
I can say that the development agreement makes sure that the regional entities that require payment will be paid. And Sherry can be maybe more specific, would be my guess. I don't know if she has the development agreement handy.
I don't have the development agreement handy, but if you look in the development agreement and you search on the word TAMSI fee, it is referenced. So the TAMSI fee is referenced, the Marina Coast Water District fees are referenced, and the habitat fees are referenced. And I'm not sure exactly which paragraph that's in, but it's probably in 13, 14 is my recollection without looking at it as I'm sitting here.
Okay, thank you. I'll take a look. I appreciate that.
And I might have an answer for you shortly. I just need to pull everything up. One computer, too many things to do.
Okay. Lane Long's got his hand up. Lane, you're on mute still. There you go.
Thank you, Josh. So I had a couple questions. So on the prevailing wage, you said it was requires to pay prevailing wage with as to the extent required by Labor Code 1720. So exactly what does that mean? So is it going to be paying prevailing wage or not? And then my second question is, it talked about 1,485 units that would be built. How is that in relationship to the 6,600 cap that we've had in place? And can you explain how that works and how that works with the water that has been allocated to everyone? Just help me to understand that.
Okay, I got two questions from Lane. One on prevailing wage and what does the Labor Code Section 1720 et sequa and or recorded covenants mean? And how does the 1485 relate to the 6,600 or the 6160 rather?
Sorry, thank you.
Building a cap under the Sierra Club settlement agreement. Craig.
Well, I can answer those, but I'm sure Sherry can do a much better job.
Sherry.
Yeah, so 1485 is under the total 6160 cap. And with respect to water supply, there's a water supply assessment in the project, which addresses both the allocation, the planning allocations that FORA has allocated to the city of Seaside, and the project plans for how long-term water supply will be provided for that level of build out. And with respect to your question on prevailing wage, there are provisions in that require the payment of prevailing wage. So, during our hearings, I can also say that the developer has addressed the city council and confirmed that yes, indeed, this project is a prevailing wage project. And just going back for everybody's frame of reference, I was a little off on my paragraphs. It's paragraph 9 is where the fees are addressed for TAMSI and Marina Coast Water District. And there's also, Lane, you will appreciate this, a FORA replacement payment for habitat obligations as well, addressed in that paragraph.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments from members? Okay, seeing none. How about any questions or comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, hearing none. I'll entertain a motion. Can I get a motion? Motion from Dino Pick. Do you want to state the motion?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. I would gladly move staff recommendation.
Thank you, Dino. Got a motion from Dino. Can I get a second?
I'll second it. Dino beat me to the motion.
Okay, second from Marina. Thank you, Lane. So Harry, let's do a roll call vote on the motion.
Craig Malin,
Aye.
Dino Pick,
Aye.
Lane Long,
Aye.
Melanie Beretti.
Yes.
I think Hans did not show up, so those are the 4 members.
You vote aye, though.
We'll put an I with an asterisk by Uslar. Right, motion passes unanimously. All right, congratulations to this step. So the next step for this will be packaging it up for the board. I think our current target is the June 4th meeting. We want to move this as quickly as possible. Also on the June 4th meeting will be a set of final actions related to the ESCA LRA transfer, which is quickly moving to conclusion with some other federal actions and documents. We're gonna bring that along with the this item and potentially the transition plan, although we may end up pushing that one to the June 11th meeting. But this is a big step, so thank you all for the action and for the review and the questions.
Congratulations, Seaside.
Yeah.
Thank you
Okay.
all very much. The Seaside appreciates it.
Congrats.
Good job. Now move forward.
That's right. Okay, so now we're at items from members. Item 8. Any items from members? Okay, seeing none, hearing none. It looks like we're at item 9, adjournment. Just keep in mind that the next regular meeting of the admin committee will be June 3rd. It'll be a similar type of format in terms of we'll have a special board meeting planned for the next day. So we'll get a chance to talk about the package there, but it'll kind of be the day before. These are the nature of our time frame at the moment. And we appreciate just generally the continued recognition, acknowledgement of the timeliness of what we're trying to do here in the last 41 days, 7 hours, 14 minutes, and 2 seconds. So you'll be hearing from us and we'll be hearing from you, and we'll look forward to see everybody. If not before, we'll see folks on Friday for the board meeting. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Josh.